All right, let's talk some Kyler Murray for a second. And I found something fascinating. And I want to be very clear up front that this is not a negative about Kyler Murray, and we'll talk about why it isn't as we get further into this video, although it might seem like one at first. So let me explain. Recently, and you're going to see this a good amount this week, is I've kind of started making more videos about just what certain players' numbers are, and not necessarily like box score stats, because I think those can be highly misleading and aren't the best way to evaluate a player, although, again, it'll get you in the ballpark, right? Like using a passer rating might not be perfect, but it'll get you in the ballpark. But anyways, what I'm more fascinated on are sort of stats about certain attributes of a quarterback and using those statistics to back up what I've seen on film. One thing I did was I kind of looked at Pro Football Focus has a statistic that's sacks attributed to the quarterback, at least have some percentage attributed to the quarterback, if not entirely attributed to the quarterback. And I find this to be a very interesting statistic. One thing I've often talked about on this channel is that people don't pay enough attention to that, the fact that sacks can be a quarterback statistic. And I looked at Kyler Murray and was shocked to find he has 10 sacks this season attributed to him, which is the second most in the NFL, only behind Zach Wilson, who, he has a lot of issues so far early on that, we're hoping he can learn and grow from. So, what is the deal here? Currently, 25.6% of the pressures that have been generated against the Arizona Cardinals have attributed some blame to Kyler Murray, which is the most in the NFL. So what's the deal? And another fascinating statistic is that it's not like these are all happening quickly or all happening long into the play. He has a 2.81 average time to throw, which is 16th in the NFL. So, basically dead center. I believe it was among 38 total quarterbacks. The time it takes him to be sacked is 3.71 seconds, which sounds like a lot, and it is. It's the 7th most in the NFL. So not like crazy high, but, on the high side for sure. So what do we make of all this? What is there to make of all of this when it comes to Kyler Murray? Is he, just bad when it comes to pocket presence? Well, no, of course not. We've all seen a million highlights of him being amazing, scrambling around the pocket and then finding an open guy. Are we just misremembering that? No, I don't think so. I think, my reading of this data is probably what people in the comments are going to also say, when they're defending Kyler Murray, which I agree with. I think it's because he oftentimes will, scramble out of clean pockets to find something good, and more often than not, it works, but there is the occasional time it'll turn himself into, he'll turn himself into getting a sack, which means that, okay, that is a bad play by him, but for the most part, usually when he does this, it ends up in a good play. There just is the occasional misfire. Using this chart, I think this is a really fascinating chart to let us really know what's going on with Kyler Murray, and it really kind of goes to show that, okay, he does generate some pressures himself. In fact, he generates more pressures himself than anyone else in the NFL, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, because look at the baseline 2.5 seconds. That's a pretty good baseline, because typically 2.5 seconds into a play is when a pressure happens. It's usually right around there. But with Kyler Murray, you see that his numbers are, so just so you know what you're looking at, when it's less than 2.5 seconds that he's getting rid of the football, he has a 3rd ranked Pro Football Focus grade and a 6th best passer rating. And again, to be clear, this is comparing him to other quarterbacks when they throw the ball more than or less than 2.5 seconds. And then when he's holding onto the ball for a while, it's still 3rd ranked Pro Football Focus grade and best passer rating. So, things go pretty higher up there, whether you're a fan of Pro Football Focus grades or a fan of passer rating. The reality is he's great either way, whether he's getting rid of the ball quickly or taking a long time to get rid of the ball. Another fascinating stat, you go to that bottom section of the screen. When he's kept clean, he currently has a passer rating a Pro Football Focus grade of 11th. When he's under pressure, it jumps up to 2nd. His passer rating when he's under pressure is best in football, and his passer rating when he's kept clean, still 5th best in football. So again, he's doing stuff well regardless, but actually when he leaves the pocket, things actually are better for him. Now, better might be the wrong word, because when he's kept clean, his passer rating is 114, whereas when he's under pressure, his passer rating is 105.1. Both very good statistics, but obviously he still is better when he has a clean pocket. That's, to be expected. So I wanted to throw that in there because, again, it's more so he's better comparative to his peers than he is actually better than when he's kept clean, just to clear that up. So what do we make of all of this? What is there to make of all of this? I think that two things can be true at once. I think it's a totally reasonable thing to sit here and say, you know what? He does sometimes hold on to the ball for too long. He will generate sacks. He will generate pressures by, trying to make something happen and running into it. And I think it's also fair to say that he should keep doing this stuff. He should make sure that he keeps, running into sacks sometimes, because more often than not, it's going to work out. Like, let me show some examples now using the film, because that's what you always want to do, right? You don't just look at numbers and say that's what's happening. You use film to help understand the way that you view this stuff. So let's now watch the film and see how it backs up the data. So first, we're going to show this play where Kyler Murray is going to run a play action, and you see that there's pressure, but he actually gets out of the pressure, and it's not until the third Texan player comes over that he's going to end up getting sacked. So that's another interesting aspect in all of this, I think, is that, I don't know exactly how PFF does their grading scale in terms of, who they attribute the sacks to. I don't know if this counts as a sack because of Kyler or not, but this is an interesting factor where he's also getting himself out of sacks with his running around, whereas obviously Tom Brady in that situation just goes down. Of course, we all know this. I'm not adding anything new to the dialogue of Kyler Murray. We all know he can do this stuff. But part of when he runs into sacks is when he escapes one pressure only to run into another guy, which kind of happens here. Another example is something like this, where he's going to take the snap, he sees that he has a running lane and ends up getting tripped up, and that is officially ruled a sack because he did not get back to the line of scrimmage. But obviously, more often than not, when he takes off and does this stuff, it's a good thing. So if he wasn't being able to get many rushing yards and wasn't doing an effective job of this kind of stuff, then you would say he's got to cut that out. And I think it's important to bring this up now while things are going well for Kyler, because there will undoubtedly at a certain point be a game where Kyler does this a couple of times and maybe they lose the football game and everyone will blame Kyler Murray. No, he should keep doing this. It's just not going to have a 100% success rate, but is still going to have a high success rate. This is the play that if you're a Kyler Murray hater, you'll use this data to attack Murray, which again, that's not what I'm using it for, but you could try to swing it that way if you want to. People can look at data and create different conclusions of it. This is the play where, he had a little bit of time to throw. He could have gotten rid of it. Eventually, he decides to run because his typical move is when something isn't open, instead of throwing it away, he goes to run. It doesn't always work out. This time, he ended up getting sacked right there. So this is the argument of he should have thrown it away. Maybe in this instance, but again, he had no way of knowing that there was pressure on the edge and him running would have just allowed him to be sacked. Whereas, usually when he does this, it actually gives him more time. That then allows him to do stuff like this, where, nothing's open right away, but he then scrambles out and finds a way to get something open. So did he create a pressure there? Yeah, I would say yes. I think he created a pressure. If he stayed in the pocket, a pressure doesn't come as quickly at the very least, but he also created a touchdown there. So a pressure isn't in itself a bad thing, and I think that's kind of the lesson to learn here. Now, there is one negative I will say about all this data, which is that a lot of analytics people, which I kind of understand, will say this point that how well you perform under pressure, it's not entirely luck or anything, but it's just a little bit fluky, where sometimes, whether or not you do have a good play is kind of up to chance. It's up to, if your receiver got open versus not getting open, as opposed to actually a good play from you. You look at guys who have really good seasons with a passer rating under pressure, it almost immediately goes down. A good example is Justin Herbert last year, who his passer rating under pressure was 99, which is would be historically great if he kept it up. It then falls down to 74 this season. I would suspect something similar will happen with Kyler. I mean, no one has ever consistently had a passer rating under pressure over 80. It's never happened in football. Guys have had random one-off really good seasons and then fallen back down to earth. And that's probably going to happen with Kyler, but he's still really good under pressure, and you do control it to some degree, obviously, of course. It just usually anything, less than 55 or more than 75-ish tends to be a little bit fluky. That's the way I understand it, because it's something that, I've done sort of a Will It Moneyball on that as well. And I'm not quite sure I fully, believe it, but the data does seem to back it up, so I guess I should fully believe it. But the conclusion here, and really what I'm trying to get at, is basically what I've done in this video is found out a flaw that nobody is attributing to Kyler whatsoever, saying this does exist, but it doesn't matter. So, like, what have we, okay, we're all cool, we're back to square one. But I think this kind of stuff is fascinating because this works in a lot of different ways, not just with Kyler Murray. It's just kind of one example of, I think maybe a good example would be a baseball player who strikes out a lot but hits a lot of home runs. Like, you can say, yeah, he strikes out a lot, but you don't want him to change his swing because then he'll stop hitting the home runs. You don't want Kyler to stop scrambling outside the pocket because of the 10 sacks, because he more than makes up for it with the other stuff that he's adding to the team, with the contribution he's adding. And as we said, he's performing almost as well under pressure as he is when he's not under pressure. So, yeah. Very fascinating stuff, I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.